So may I introduce our two guests of honour, wheelchair tennis legend David Hall, OAM. Where are you, David? There you are. And former Davis Cup captain, Wally Masur. By way of context, David was number one for 8 years, I think, winning the Australian Open Wheelchair Tennis Club 9 times, the British Open 7 times, the US Open 8 times, the Japan Open 8 times. Of course, David was also a Paralympic gold medalist and a 6-time world champion. Not much of an underachiever, really, were you? Wally, of course, a former professional player in his own right, a dual Grand Slam semi-finals with a career high singles ranking of 15. As mentioned, he both played Davis Cup for Australia and then captained our team to the semi-finals in 2015, I think, yep. And of course, he's since become a much loved and respected commentator. So we'll now be lucky enough to witness a little fireside chat between these two. Please make welcome to Collaroy Tennis Club, David Hall and Wally Masur.
Let's start with the book that you've just written, Super Beast. Obviously, you're of an age, you've been retired for a number of years. You achieved so much, but you know, that is over. The competition is over and you get 20 odd years to reflect on everything that you've been through. What came out of writing that book for you? Were there a couple of resonating things?
Yeah, I think I needed distance from the playing career. Like when I started in 2019, you know, I'd been retired from wheelchair tennis for 15 years pretty much, and so it was actually nice to have space to really think about stuff and, you know, let like a lot of memories and feelings and emotions and experiences kind of sink in from all those, you know, years on the tour. But I think also, you know, reflecting on the teenage years and childhood and, you know, the night of the accident, and so it was actually good. I think it was good that I didn't write the book straight away. I think, you know, a lot of people said, you know, after you retire you should write about all your experiences and winning all the tournaments and becoming number one and the Hall of Fames and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, no, I need, you know, time to kind of let everything sink in. And
to be number one for 8 years is staggering. But I looked at the amount of matches that you played, singles and doubles, over a 10-year career, professional career. You competed in excess of 1,000 times. You add that up, you're almost playing a competitive match every 3 or 4 days over a decade. Obviously they're bunched, I'm averaging it out. That's pretty phenomenal, because then what I'm thinking about is the volume of work, the pyramid of training that goes into playing all of those matches and being that successful. So I think the title of Super Beast is pretty appropriate, but I just wanted to ask you about motivation. Everyone has different motivations. What was your motivation to be that driven to put yourself through that?
yeah, you do kind of end up suffering, I think, in different ways, because, you know, you have to be selfish. And I think the first tournament that I won was a small tournament in Ventura, in California. That was the first tournament I won on the like worldwide tour. And I loved the feeling of, I mean, who doesn't love the feeling of winning? Like there's nothing, you know, nothing beats it. Like, it doesn't matter what club you're at, what tournament you're at, you know, it's like a buzz, it's almost like an electric shock that is kind of running through your veins. So I felt that little bit of like electric shock, adrenaline rush from winning Ventura. But then when I realized that, you know, the US Open was the biggest tournament in the world and was the historical heartbeat of wheelchair tennis in Southern California. And once I realized that was the tournament to win, then that's what drove me to try to win that. And then once I did win it in '95, think of that little electric shock that I got from winning Ventura, now times that by 1,000. And I thought, man, if I can win these kind of majors year after year, then I just want that feeling over and over and over again. And then when I realized that, you know, if you win enough of these majors during the year, you can finish the year world number one. And then what happens when you finish the year world number one? You get invited to the World Champions dinner in Paris, like a black tie event during the French Open, and you get up on stage with whoever the able-bodied champions are of, you know, that previous season, And so you have a chance to get on stage with Graf, Sampras, or whoever those the able-bodied number ones were, and that was motivation enough, like to try to get back to that stage every year.
Roger Federer said recently, he did a speech at Harvard, and he said that he mentioned that of all the points he ever played in professional tennis, he only won 54% of them. For someone as good as Roger Federer, it seems a staggering statistic. And I think Novak is even slightly less at 53%, Rafa around the same. It's an unusual sport, isn't it? Because you've got to absorb a lot of disappointment. So I just want you to talk about your relationship with Rich Berman, how you handle disappointment on the tennis court, how you bounce back from adversity on the tennis court, and were you always honest with yourself after a loss?
Well, it's interesting because when I was juggling tennis and work. Like I was working as a clerk for the government at a police station, and I was juggling that with playing tournaments overseas. And like working for the government, I don't know how many people here work for the government, but you only get so many weeks off a year. And so I was trying to juggle that with traveling around playing tournaments, but I knew I couldn't do both well. Like something had to give. And so I put all the eggs in the basket and then just quit work and then started traveling, playing wheelchair tennis. And I think early on I had some losses where I couldn't, it was almost like I put too much pressure on myself because I'd made this huge move. Like I'd quit work and now all the eggs were in the tennis basket. And so I realized quite quick that I can't put all this pressure on myself. I've got dreams, I've got goals, but I need to, leave losses in the past. Like understand why. Like was it technique based or tactically based or whatever. So I think once I did that and I was able to let losses like drift to the past and try to learn from them, then that was helpful. But by the time I found Rich, actually I met someone that lived in Boulder, Colorado, and she lived on the other side of the planet, so I moved there and I had to find a coach. I found Rich in the Yellow Pages, and he had worked with some local Yellow Pages, you believe, but he had worked with some local wheelchair players, not quite at my level, but at the time I thought I was pretty good in terms of being a player. I just won the Australian Open months earlier, beating Laurent Germatini, like a fantastic French player, and I was ranked number 2 in the world. But the first lesson I ever had with Rich, he was pointing out holes in my game that I never thought existed. I thought I was pretty good. And so I didn't trust Rich, because no coach had ever said this before. Because one of the questions that he did ask me, he said, how serious are you about becoming a better player? And I thought that was an interesting question to ask, a student, because as you may or may not know, some students, some players aren't that interested in improving. Like they just want to go out there and hit balls, have fun in the sun, or whatever it is. And so I think it was a real valid question from Rich.
I just want to touch on the difference between playing for yourself, and you talk about that personal battle with your opponent when you're playing in the Australian Open titles and the Grand Slam titles, then when you're representing your country at the Paralympics, and then when you're representing your country in World Cup teams. I personally found it very difficult playing for Australia. I just felt like there was a weight on my shoulders. How did you cope with the two dynamics?
I think you're right. I think it's definitely easier to play for yourself. But I think it's almost like with the World Team Cup teams, and especially that, I think we were, like our teams were quite close, and I think that we kind of got energy from each other. Like whether it was, supporting each other or, what it's like, the camaraderie that you build up with these guys, you have dinners and breakfast, and you're around the players so much, and you know them from being on the tour for all those years. And so I think that part of playing for your country, I think was good, that we could kind of draw energy from each other, even though it is a bit more difficult than just playing for yourself. Like I was a big advocate of sports psychology, and I kind of got onto that quite early in my career. There's a great book, I don't know if anyone knows it, by Michael Johnson, the track and field athlete. He wrote a book called Slaying the Dragon. And it's a great book about dealing with fear of failure, dealing with like how do you handle success, like what motivates you, how do you tap into that. Hopefully it's still in print, because I would recommend it to any budding tennis player out there, any coach, anyone that's interested in psychology. Check it out, Slaying the Dragon. Great book. Not as good as Super Beast, but not bad.
Gold in singles at the Sydney Olympics.
Yeah.
Does it get any better?
No, it doesn't. It does not get any better. And I can't deny it, like I can't say that it was some random Australian Open or some US Open. No, it was, winning gold. I mean, that was what I wanted. That was the thing that I've been thinking about for 7 years, ever since it was announced. And like I remember, like years earlier, I'd be out even in the Mustang, driving up to the Hunter Valley, having one of my glorious red wines up there. But I'd be thinking about, okay, like the gold medal potentially is on the horizon. Maybe we were 3 years away from the Paralympics even happening in Sydney, but I'll just get these little snippets in my mind of like what that would be like to at least play for a gold medal. And when it got closer, I just had to kind of compartmentalize everything. Like obviously there was a lot of build up to it. The way they did the ticketing was fantastic, and so we kind of thought that there was going to be at least there were rumours of 1 million tickets being sold, which was unheard of, for a Paralympic Games. And so that was, oh my God, this is going to be massive. And when I went out there for that first match, I had a bye. It would have been second round. I went out. It was on a Sunday, I think. I played a young Swede, and the stadium, which is now Ken Rosewall Arena, was 3/4 full, and that 10,000 seat. So it would have been like 7,000 people in the stands. I was like, wow, like these games are going to be massive. I've got to do everything I possibly can to at least give myself a chance.
I'm in absolute admiration of everything that you've achieved. It's absolutely phenomenal, and the person that you are and how you've represented Australia. It was awesome for me to have a chance to chat to you today. And I just want to say congratulations. It's a very long list of achievements I had to write down from David Hall, and you must be very proud.
Thanks, Wally. Thanks, man. I always love chatting with you. We've caught up over the years, and you're a great Australian stalwart of tennis, and you've done like incredible things for the sport in this country, and so it's always my pleasure to catch up with you. And congrats to Collaroy for getting behind the All Abilities initiative, and it's fantastic what you're doing here, and congrats on all the programs that you're running. It's obvious that you have a deep love of tennis, and I think that's why we keep gravitating back to the sport, like in various different ways, whether that is competing, coaching, admin, whatever. And I think it's fantastic that everyone could show up today and support tennis. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks, David, and thank you.